Welcome back, everybody. I'm super excited to have you here. In this workshop, we're going to talk about different ways that you can grow your following. I'm going to talk to you specifically what the algorithm looks for and how you can cater to that. And I'm also going to go over two different social media strategies. One is if you don't want to spend any money on growing your social media account, and one is if you do have some money that you would like to invest to help you grow faster. So I'm going to go through those two different social media strategies, and then we're also going to go through troubleshooting issues such as what to do if your engagement is too low or if you're not growing fast enough. I'm going to talk about common problems and how to fix them so that hopefully you can grow your account faster. I created this post that's going to go out sometime in October, but basically this does a pretty good job, I think, of summing up what the algorithm looks for in order to help you grow. And they have a quality score, they have an engagement score, and then they consider other factors. But if you really take a look at every single point that's on this post, you'll notice that there's two main factors, and that is, are people spending a lot of time on your page looking at your posts, and number two, are people engaging and interacting with the content you're putting out. Those are really the two main points that the algorithm is looking for, and there's various ways to look at that. So are people tagging you? Are people sharing your posts? Are bigger accounts following you and listening to your advice? All of these different factors will all play a role in your growth. And so if you're able to structure your strategy to accommodate to this, then you're putting yourself in a bit of a better position, because it's kind of like flowing with the stream versus upstream, you know? You're not getting as much resistance from the algorithm in and of itself. Now, part of understanding what the algorithm is looking for has to do with understanding what people are looking for. Because if you can attract the people, then the algorithm is going to support you in that, right? And so number one is you have to understand human nature. People want to feel unique, they want to feel special, and they want to feel like they're a part of something. So if you can create that type of experience on your page where people feel like they're a part of something, where people are constantly checking in to see what's going on, when people are wanting to buy your product or service in order to be part of what it is you're offering, then you're going to have really good growth. And I think the biggest factor that people look for is they want to feel unique and special. Everybody's dying to be that one person that stands out, that is really honored and appreciated. And so if you can show that to them and cater to that a little bit within reason, then those people are going to like you because you like them. And this is gonna really help you build your community as well. I'm going to walk you through an 11-step process for building relationships. And I assume most, if not all of you guys already have pretty good social skills developed and you already know how to make friends, but take this with a grain of salt. If it helps you, then great. If not, you know, you can ignore it. But this is the 11-step process for building relationships and making friends. And step number one is understanding that you build relationships and connections one at a time. And I think this is where a lot of people struggle, is they want to have some fast and easy way of doing that, and you cannot systemize people. I cannot stress that enough. People are not something that you can, you know, talk to one time and then expect to have a really great relationship with that person. It doesn't work like that in, you know, relationships of any type in the real world. So why you would expect it to work like that online, not a good thought process to follow. So if you're making relationships with influencers or bigger accounts or people in your niche or your followers themselves and building your community, then understand that that process in and of itself is going to take time. To get to know people takes time. To build trust takes time. And you're limited in how many people you can talk to as well, right? And so you are going to be limited because you can only build one relationship at a time, and you need to do that consistently over a long time to see significant results from that. So I want to make sure I set proper expectations when it comes to building relationships online. The second step is you want to make sure that you're being friendly and making connections. Get to know people, ask them what their hobbies are, ask them about their business or anything that's relevant to your product or service. That's not salesy, right? You know, if you're a clothing brand, you wouldn't start a conversation with, what size are you, you know? But, you know, you could compliment them on their style or say, hey, that was a really cute top, where'd you get it? You know, show an interest in them. And this follows into step number 3, which is just asking questions, getting to know people, seeing what they like and they don't like. Step number 4 is to also tell people about yourself. Relationships, let me correct that. Healthy relationships are reciprocal, right? What you put in is what you get out of them. So people are going to want to know who you are, what you have to say, a little bit about your story, and that helps them get to know you too, and that helps establish rapport. Step number 5 is to go places and do things. Obviously, if you're trying to build a relationship with somebody, you want to go hang out. Online, I would say that you can skip that. Obviously, you know, if they're halfway across the world, you're not going to be doing things like that. Plus, there's safety considerations because there are some crazy people out there. But obviously, like in a real life situation, then you would obviously want to go hang out with those people. But I understand that online that's not possible and in some cases not safe. So take that one with a grain of salt. And step number 6 is to accept people the way they are. I find that the less I judge people based on their responses or things that they say and instead get curious and ask questions, not only does that help them open up to me a little bit better, but it also helps me gain better understanding of them and their needs. Step number 7 is to assume that other people want to build relationships too. A lot of sales and relationship building in general is to assume a positive mindset. Even if somebody isn't excited about talking to you or, you know, hearing about your product or service or whatever, if you still assume it in a positive way and you ignore that attitude, in some cases, obviously not all, but most, you can actually flip their attitude and their mindset around because you're showing so much interest in them and getting to know them. People feel bad in a lot of cases to ignore that. So as long as you aren't being overly pushy and you're just showing an interest, a lot of people will automatically be hooked into that and actually by default be more interested in talking to you too. Step number 8 is to overcome your fear of rejection. This is so common in sales, and honestly, if you're somebody who's very introverted like I am, or if you have no sales experience, practicing just building relationships on their own before you get to the selling stage can actually significantly help you overcome your fear of rejection because you're not asking people for anything. You're literally just talking to them. It's no different than if you went to the mall and you just started conversations with people. So I can understand that it's very nerve-wracking for if you're not used to it, but it's a really good skill set to have. Step number 9 is to be persistent, kind of similar to step number 7. You want to make sure that you're assuming a positive attitude because a lot of people are shy and suspicious when somebody is being friendly with them for no reason, right? Our first instinct is to kind of pull back. And so it's important that you be persistent through that. And obviously, if somebody's getting super annoyed, you obviously want to back off. But in most cases, people will come around. In a lot of cases, people will actually become more interested in the conversation. So you really want to make sure that you're being persistent. Step number 10 is to invite people to get involved. And you want to kind of read the situation with steps like this because if somebody is wanting to get to know your product or service more, inviting them to a lead magnet or resources or videos or a membership or whatever can help them get more involved in your company and your business. If people are more involved and they're making comments or they're liking your post or they're visiting your page, if we think back to the algorithm, that's all helping you. The thing is, if you're DMing people, that still counts as an engagement. So by making friends with them, you're actually, once again, working with the algorithm. So it's really good to do. And finally, step number 11 is just to enjoy people. Even if you read sales books, you will see that a lot of them are like, you need to genuinely enjoy talking to people and genuinely have an interest in them. Whether they believe that you're truly interested in them or not doesn't really matter. But I really want you to approach it from that attitude, because that's really going to help you build long-term and sustainable relationships that are all going to aid in your growth and your sales. Next, I want to talk to you about establishing influence, because obviously we are not trying to make friends just to make friends, right? We're trying to influence them to ultimately make a purchase one day from our company and make money from that, right? And so influence is always going to be a factor of that. So once again, there's actually formulas and steps that you can take in order to establish influence. Number one is to make connections. So if you're relationship building and you're connecting with bigger accounts and you are building trust with your followers and doing a bunch of different things like that, then you are making connections, and by default you are actually increasing your influence. Okay, just doing that alone, you've already increased your influence. Step number two is make sure that you're listening before you're trying to persuade. And I talk a lot about this in my posts where I talk about DMing strategies, because if you're jumping in with your pitch too soon, it makes it a lot more difficult for people to warm up to the idea of your product or service. If you're jumping into somebody who's never talked to you, never had a conversation with you, and you're like, hey, do you want to give me your money? A lot of people just say no to that unless they're actually in dire need of that product or service. But when you take the time to listen to that person, let them tell you a little bit about themselves, and you listen for their problems and their pain points, then you can actually insert your service or product into that as a solution to the problem that they expressed they had. When you are just jumping into a pitch, you don't know if you're using the right trigger words that that individual person needs to hear in order to buy from you. I'd also like to point out that a big part of marketing and where you make profitability with ads is through segmentation, which means divvying up your customer base based on what their problems are, what solution they're looking for, and what trigger words and pain points they specifically have. Because when you create an ad that's specific to that person, then that person's a lot more likely to click through than if it was just a generic ad with a bunch of different, pain points and trigger words put into it, because not all of them are going to trigger that specific person. Versus with segmentation, you can actually make it a lot more persuasive and effective for that individual. But you don't know about your segments unless you've talked to your customers, and over time you will see that certain groups of people have certain types of problems with certain complaints, and over time it starts to make sense. And by talking to people one-on-one first, you're really collecting that data, and you're collecting good data. The third step in establishing influence is to make sure that you're minding your body language and your tone. You want to be friendly, you want to make sure that you are approachable and that you have open body language. Online, once again, this probably isn't as big of a deal as it is in person, but you want to make sure that you are conveying a really friendly tone as best you can. Because when we meet somebody new, our brain is constantly thinking, okay, is this person friend or are they foe? And we're hyper vigilant to that with somebody we don't know. And so by being friendly, being approachable, using good language that isn't triggering to somebody else, then you are going to be able to accomplish that goal. Step number 5 is to establish some sort of expertise. This can be done through your content that we went over in the last workshop, where you're eliminating objections, you're giving valuable tips, and you're also providing social proof for your product or service. That's all going to help highlight your expertise. Step number 6 is giving people what they want and what they're asking for. And obviously there's going to be some limitations to this, but you can frame your product or service or your pitch or whatever as a benefit to them with their issue. And by framing it in a positive light and as the solution, you can create the impression that you're giving that person exactly what they need. I hope these tips all help you with your influence and your persuasiveness when you're building relationships and connections with your followers and your community. A strategy for directly increasing your engagement, especially if you have a small account, is simply to DM people and welcome your new followers. And this is something that's directly within your control, so you're not a sitting duck waiting for other people to comment on your post or anything like that. You can directly go and engage with them. And that's why having relationship skills and influential skills is important in this process. And I want to give you guys a few examples of DM strategies and different messages that you can send people. For me, it was really awkward starting conversations with people that started following me because, you know, I didn't know anything about them and I didn't really know how to start a conversation. And so what I did at first was I would just say like, hey, thanks for following me, how are you? And I would start like a conversation. And I found that that didn't work very well specifically for me because people were kind of like, okay, like what's the point in this conversation? Like it didn't really have a purpose, and I don't think they liked that, and I know I certainly didn't. And so what I would recommend is start with a little blurb that, hey, like thank you so much for following me and supporting my content. And then you can actually go into your pitch or your services or a little lead magnet or anything like that that's super low risk on their part that might actually be helpful to them. So for example, all of you guys, I was like, hey, like, do you want to join this workshop? That's it. Okay, so the conversation still has a purpose. You're showing thanks and appreciation for them taking the initiative to follow you and, you know, support your content through likes or comments, but you're also throwing in your services there as well, which can also be helpful for conversions. If somebody is genuinely interested in having, you know, I don't know, like a new photographer or somebody to handle their financial services, then that person's going to be highly engaged in that message. And then people who aren't as interested won't be, and then that's totally okay too. You still made yourself look good by welcoming them and saying like, hey, these are my services. If you're interested, let me know. A second approach is to get them involved. Once again, you're kind of going back to that relationship checklist where you can actually get them involved to help you. So for me, I've been getting people to help me make content. I'm like, what topics are you interested in? What is your business? And then people usually share what their business is, what their challenges are, and it's super easy for me to make content around that. And you know, this one guy, he's a photographer, and I actually really liked his photography. I thought it was very well done. And so in October, you'll see a post with him as a photographer, and you know, answering his marketing questions in that post. And so that gets people very involved. It's good for them because I can mention them in the post. That gets them extra reach, and like I said, that helps me with my content, so I got no issue with that. And so once again, that's very rapport building, and it serves a purpose in the DM. You're contacting them for a reason. If you were a clothing brand, you could approach them with, once again, hey, thanks for so much for following me. I really appreciate you. I have this really cute style guide, and if you want me to send that to you, I can do so. Just let me know what your email is. I also do 20% off all new followers and customers. If anything in that style guide you like, feel free to order it. Here's my website. You know, it doesn't need to be super involved. It just needs to be very low risk on their part. So either you're telling them need to know information, or you're inviting them to a lead magnet or a membership or something that's of value to them, and then you can follow up with a pitch if you want afterwards. I've also created a little guide for you guys that goes through step-by-step process on creating a DM, and then also it gives you a bunch of different examples that you guys can hopefully use in your businesses. I want to take a second now and talk to you about different social media strategy approaches if you have no budget to work with versus if you do have a bit of a budget to invest in your social media marketing. So let's talk about social media marketing on a budget if you're trying to grow your account. The first thing I want you to consider and understand is that you're trying to increase your visibility as much as possible. Instagram's algorithm actively works against you, okay? They don't want you to organically get a lot of reach. They want you to pay for ads, okay? And so the one way that you can get a significant amount of organic reach is through Reels, okay? Reels don't cost you anything and they get significantly more reach than a standard post does. I already showed you these analytics from the last workshop where I demonstrated clearly that Reels are reaching an audience that's outside of your following. And it's really hard to reach that broad of an audience without paying for ads if you choose not to use Reels. And so some accounts actually aren't doing standard feed posts at all. They're only doing Reels, and that arguably would grow your account a lot faster. For me personally, I don't like just doing Reels. I like to do posts. I think that carousel posts give a lot of value. So I make the choice to keep it in, right? But you don't have to do that. If you're limited in how often you can post and how much time you have to do content, then prioritize Reels first. The second point is you want to post as often as possible that still coincides with your schedule. So the number one thing is to do high quality content and to post consistently. If you are trying to post at such a frequency that you are losing quality or you're not able to be consistent, then that's too much for your schedule and fall back a little bit. Anytime that you are sacrificing quality or consistency, take a step back, okay? Quality and consistency will get you a lot farther over time than speed and posting 24/7, okay? And so you still want to be posting as much as you can, but make sure that it's realistic for your schedule. The second thing is you want to make sure that you're getting use out of your hashtags. I talked about hashtags in greater detail in the previous workshop, so if you haven't watched it, go watch that for more in-depth information on how to actually do your hashtags. But hashtags aren't going to give you a significant amount of reach, but they can help. And if you're not spending any money on your social media growth, then you want to be doing the most of everything to make sure that you're still growing at a rate that you're happy with. You also want to make sure you're engaging. So we already talked that the algorithm really cares about the people who are spending time on your posts and who are taking time to engage with you. So you can engage with people through DM, you can do it through the comments, you can like, share, or save. All of these different post interactions are all count towards engagement. So you want to make sure that your captions are encouraging that. And like I said, if you have a smaller account, you're likely not getting a bunch of comments or people DMing you or anything like that. In which case, go DM them. Don't wait for somebody to come around and start a conversation with you, because you're going to be missing out on a lot of opportunities if you have that attitude. And if you're not paying for your social media growth, then honestly, you can't afford to not take advantage of those opportunities. So make sure you're engaging with any comments that you get on your posts. Make sure that you're DMing new followers and thanking them for following you and trying to be as helpful and service-based as you can. And that's all going to help you grow. Next, you also want to make sure that you're contacting other accounts and you're building relationships with either accounts that have a similar following as you or a bigger following as you. And this is going to require not only really good social media etiquette skills, but you're also going to need to be able to influence and build relationships with people. And this is more true if you have a smaller account. People are less likely to want to do a collaboration with you or give you a shout out if you have a smaller account. Like, there's just less in it for those people. And it can still be a lot of work to do a collab. So if you have a bigger account, you're going to have an easier time with this. If you have a smaller account, you're going to have a harder time with this. And I'm sorry, I don't make the rules. That's just generally how that plays out. But if you're able to befriend quite a few different accounts, you guys are able to shout each other out and establish a rapport that's genuine And if your target audience coincides and you guys share a target audience, then that can be mutually beneficial and a really good idea, especially if you're not wanting to pay for reach. This is a really easy way to get organic reach through networking with other people. If you're careful to make sure that you're offering a collaboration with a ton of value for that other person, you really want to set it up so that there's really no reason why they would say no. If you make it really easy on them, if it's of high perceived value to them, then you should have really no issue doing that. For example, if you owned a pet business, then like let's say you sold dog collars or something like that, then approaching dog trainers and wanting to do collaborations with them is a really easy thing to do. It's good for them, it's good for you, because if you guys are bringing each other clients, then, you know, why would somebody say no to that? Now let's switch gears and talk about if you have money to invest. The same points for social media growth that are for people that don't want to invest money are still the same. They still hold value. But if you are wanting to invest money into your social media marketing, then you're actually making things more scalable, and you want to set it up so it is scalable. Remember that I said that people cannot be systematically put into a funnel and have them all obey. Everybody's unique. Everybody has their own thought processes and ways of dealing with things. So I would still encourage you to do your best to welcome new followers and to keep that engagement up on your account. Accounts that get larger over time, their engagement usually goes down. It's usually because people are unable to keep up with that. But try and do it as long as you possibly can, because like I said, it flows with the algorithm, so it's only helping you. And I know some people, I have clients where they actually buy a certain amount of hours per month, and then every day I have somebody on my team who goes in and will answer any comments or will welcome new followers. And so they buy a certain amount of hours every month, but then, you know, some days you might not have any comments, or you may only have 3 followers. So that only takes, 5 minutes of a team member's time. And so spending something like 5 hours a month on social media management just to have somebody go in and check comments and followers and everything for you every day is a good investment, because you keep up that engagement, but you're not spending your time welcoming new followers. You're actually servicing your clients. You're actually providing your service for your clients. You don't have to worry about it. So that's an option for some people. And it's really not that expensive if you have a smaller account. The second obvious point is to run ads, okay? And those are going to help drive your following, and you can also set it up so that your ads are only being shown to your target audience, which is a double win. Now, what you want to do is you want to set up a sales funnel and make your marketing more scalable. So it needs to follow a relationship building process with your customers where you're kind of removed from that. Like I said, I think it's really powerful to still retain the welcoming new followers and asking them for topic ideas, just because it really builds and solidifies that community that you're trying to build. But when it comes to lead magnets or getting people to enter your funnel, you can really set that up as an ad and not have to worry about that too much. So there are multiple ways to set up sales funnels, and we're going to go into all of them next week. But keep in mind that, like for me, my sales funnel is to actually just get new followers into my account, and then I take over and I just welcome them and I get them to either enter this membership, or some people are really interested in marketing services, so they just go straight onto a sales call. So that's my personal sales funnel, but that works more and less better for different types of companies. So you're gonna have to find something that works specifically for you. If you are a service-based business, that's probably the least costly and highest converting strategy that you can use. But like I said, we're going to go into all of this next week. The point is, though, you want to be running ads that are not only growing your following, but it's also bringing more of your target audience into your sales funnel. Essentially, you want to be setting up your sales funnel so that you're running ads and you're bringing and building your relationship with your target audience without you necessarily needing to be there. versus on a budget. And if you're not spending any money on your social media marketing, you are the driving force behind that. You are doing everything. Okay, that's the difference. And that's why it's really important that you focus on sales first, because I don't want you spending all of your time making collaborations, manually reaching out to followers and chasing sales and doing things like that. It's very time consuming, it's very difficult, and you have to be very mentally disciplined in order to do it, because let's be real, we're all human. If somebody is rude to us or somebody says no to us, it's very common to feel defeated and, kind of like your business isn't worth doing. And I don't want you guys to be feeling that way. And by running ads, you kind of take yourself out of all of those negative feelings. And the thing is, when you're manually trying to drive traffic to your website, to your lead magnet, or to buy, and you're doing that all manually, you are hearing a lot of no's from people, okay? And so unless you're very mentally disciplined and tough that way, then it's very normal for people to feel shut down when they're told no. And it's also creates a lot of doubt in your business. So the advantage of investing in ads is you don't know who that ad's being shown to. You're not there when people scroll by. You're not seeing any of that, right? The only thing you're looking at is the numbers. How many leads did I get? And so that can also just be a little bit better for your mental health, I think. But yeah, anyway, so you want to be growing your account by showing ads to your target audience, and hopefully that should be bringing in direct leads into your business. However, you're still responsible for building your community, so make sure that you're still welcoming people, make sure that you're still doing your best to answer comments. If your comments or your DMs and followers and everything is out of control, that would be a sign to pay for somebody to do it so that you can focus on your customers themselves. When you're starting a business in the beginning, it's really tough because you're doing a ton of things that you don't know how to do, and you're doing everything yourself, versus when you start to make enough money that you can invest in marketing services, then it allows you to delegate tasks that really aren't important for you to be doing, and you can focus on the customers themselves. That is probably the most profitable area of your focus. And if you're running around doing a million different things, then it makes it really difficult to focus on that. So you really need to build time management skills. You need to be able to stay organized and on top of things. You need to have everything very well planned out and coordinated. And if you've never done that before, it's just tough. But anyway, those are kind of the key differences between if you're trying to grow your social media on a budget versus if you are paying for it. I also want to point out that the people who are not spending any money on ads and they're actually driving the growth themselves, they have a lot of time to invest into doing that. You have to have a lot of time to invest into that. So I don't know about you guys, but it's very common when people don't have a budget to work with. They're usually younger kids that don't have a ton of responsibility. And so in a lot of cases, they're people that are fresh out of high school, they didn't go to college, or they dropped out of college, or they're living under their parents' roof, and so they have time to engage with all these people. They have time to build collaborations. They have time to make content. They have time to message customers. And if you work a full-time job, or you have kids, or you have a whole bunch of different responsibilities, you're going to find it very difficult to invest the time that's required in order to see significant growth with that. And so I just want to make sure that I'm setting realistic expectations for you, because I don't want you to be doing all the right things but then feel like you're not getting anywhere with it. Understand that it is very hard to grow a social media account organically without paying for ads, because Instagram's not trying to help you do that. One of the main things about growing a social media account is getting visible. People can't like, comment, or share your content or your information if they don't know about you. So getting visibility as a new business is extremely important, and an easy way that you can do this is to repurpose your content. For example, if you are making a whole bunch of Instagram reels, those are easily repurposed onto TikTok with minimal work. The sizing and the dimensions is the same. the content that tends to perform well is very similar, and you are following a very similar process with that. So if you're already going through the trouble of making one piece of content, see what other platforms that content could also do well on. For example, if you made a TikTok post, those have similar dimensions that Pinterest caters to for their pins. So realistically, if that particular reel or TikTok video follows the type of content that typically does well on Pinterest, then you can also upload it on there. So once again, you want to take that one piece of content and you want to multiply it and extend it as fast and as far as you can. I do not recommend doing this if you are just starting your first social media account. Make sure that you're getting the basics and you're going at a comfortable pace that works for you, like I said in the last workshop, and I will keep drilling this in your guys' head. The most important thing you can do is do high quality content and consistent content. So if you're branching out and doing all of these different platforms and you're doing a million things, then you're going to have a very difficult time being consistent with that. And on top of it, what a lot of people don't realize is when you're starting something new, like, you're usually not that good at it, right? And so a lot of people, when they start a new account, they're figuring out all of these different things and they're not getting the results just because they haven't developed the skills they need or the information to be able to produce high quality and consistent content yet. And so it can be very defeating for people if you've taken on too much, you're not getting results, and you're overwhelmed. So don't do that to yourself. Make sure that you're mastering one platform at a time. When it feels right to start expanding and growing, then obviously do so. But it's not something that I want you guys to be rushing and trying to get on every single platform just because you feel you have to. That's gonna do more damage than it's gonna help you. Another thing you can do is carousel posts tend to perform well on Pinterest as well. However, normal feed posts are different dimensions than what is needed on Pinterest. And so what I like to do is go into Canva, you click on File, and then you can resize, have it open in a separate document, and then just make sure you adjust your post and your graphics to still look nice for that post, and then you can re-download it and upload it into Pinterest. That is a pretty easy way to get your feed posts and carousel posts up on Pinterest, which do tend to perform well. Informational TikToks and Reels also tend to perform well on Pinterest. So if you're doing any of those types of things, I would highly encourage you to maybe check that out. If you are doing a YouTube channel, then YouTube posts tend to translate well into IGTVs. And those take a little bit of editing work as well. It's actually a little bit more time consuming than I thought it would be. But if I have any ways of speeding that up, I'll definitely let you guys know. Next, we're going to get into the troubleshooting part of this workshop, where I'm going to answer these 4 questions, which were your guys' top complaints about your social media growth and your content. So the first question is, what do I do when my growth isn't what I expected it to be? And my first question for you is, do you have realistic expectations for your growth? How social media growth works is when you have a small account that's less than 1,000 followers, that is the hardest 1,000 followers you will ever get. And that's for no other reason because you've started a new account. You're trying to figure out what content looks or works for your audience. You're trying to figure out how to be consistent with your posting. You're trying to figure out how to optimize your bio and your profile and everything. And usually you've also just set up your business. So now you're dealing with tax stuff, you're dealing with incorporations, you're dealing with logo creation and branding, you're trying to figure out what money you need to invest. And if you're leasing a place, then you have rent and you're usually setting up your office space and all of these different things. And so you have a lot on your plate aside from just social media growth. And you have to understand, like, people like me have a career around social media growth alone because there's so much involved in that. So make sure that you have fair expectations of not only your social media growth, but of yourself as well. You're probably taking on a lot. And like I said, if you're just getting your first 1,000, that is the hardest 1,000 to get. But what happens over time and why social media is a really good investment is because it gets faster and faster and faster and faster as you grow. So as hard as it was to get to 2,000 followers, 5,000 followers, 10,000 followers, your next 10,000 will be easier, okay? And the reason for this is because when you start a brand new social media account, you have no data to understand how to optimize your account, okay? And so what that typically looks like is trying a bunch of different content pieces, figuring out what works, what doesn't, and you need to have, I would say ideally about 3 months worth of content to work with before you can figure that out accurately. And I know that that probably isn't what a lot of you guys want to hear, but it's honestly just a process, and the beginning is always the toughest. So if you're in that position where you do have a new account, cut yourself some slack, be a little bit more realistic with what you're trying to do, and trust the process. Now, let's assume that you're not growing, you do have a process for being consistent, you do have quite a bit of content that you've posted that you can now look at the analytics to optimize it. What I want you to do is go into your analytics, you're gonna look at your content, and you're going to structure it so that you're looking at post interactions based within the last 3 months. You are then going to take all of your top, let's say either 7 or 15 posts, and I want you to recreate content based on that top performing content, okay? So if you're posting 15 times a month, so every other day, then I want you to take 7 posts, your top 7, and if you're somebody who is posting every day, I want you to take your top 15, and I want you to recreate content around that. Now, the second part of this is the last 7 or 8 posts that you do and the last 15 posts that you do, I want you to make that all new content that you've never tried before, that looks like it might be either fun or easy or cool and engaging for your followers to look at, okay? And the reason why I want you to do this is because you're going to keep your metrics up because you're creating top content, top performing content that is already doing well, has proven to do well on your account. So you're kind of like saving your butt a little bit there. And then the last half of the content that you're doing, that's your risky content that you really just don't know is gonna work well or not. And that's the fun part, believe it or not. I think if you're in the beginning, it's very stressful. But this is a chance for you to be as creative and to think outside the box as possible. And because you're having 50% good content and then 50% gamble content, what you're doing is you're actually testing a ton of different content. So when you redo this process next month, now you have an extra 15 posts that you can look at and you can see how that performed. And obviously not every single post of the 15 posts is going to do well, but you are highly likely to have quite a few posts that do well. And now you can add those into your arsenal of top performing posts. And this is how you optimize over time. A lot of people see significant growth at around 10 months of posting, and it's because they have the 3 months where they first started, where they did a whole bunch of different content. They have a history of being able to figure out what content did well and what type of content didn't. And they've also been able to set up their processes to do consistent content and also high quality content. All of these things work in your favor, and I find that it tends to come together at around 10 months. Take that with a grain of salt though too. I know YouTube takes a long time to start to gain traction, like you're looking at probably about 2 years. So obviously that's not going to be true in every case, but I would take that as an average. Another factor that is going to determine how fast you're growing has to do with what needle movers are you using in order to drive your growth. So I've created a checklist that will go through everything prioritized from most important to least important. And this will hopefully help you figure out maybe you're not doing something that is really important for your growth, so you could throw that in and see if that makes a difference for you. First one is content. Are you doing high quality content? Is your content branded? Is it informative? Is it helpful? Is it entertaining? Is it full of value and incentives for people to not only want to follow you, but also repeatedly come back to your account to take a look at. And the type of content that's going to perform well is going to look so different for all of you guys because you're targeting different people with different interests. The second thing is consistency. Are you being consistent? We don't trust or like people that show up, disappear, come back for a few days, and then they're gone again. You know, you wouldn't appreciate that in a significant other, and your followers don't appreciate that either. It's very hard to build community and grow that community when you're very inconsistent and coming and going all the time. Number 3 is, do you have a clear profile? The profile is only important because people land on it and that's the first thing they see. Is this profile enticing for them to want to follow you? Is it enticing for them to want to learn more from you? Are they going to want to browse through a few more of your posts before they decide whether they want to follow you or not? A lot of people overthink profiles. Honestly, is it clear? Is it concise? Does it say who you are, what you do, and why they care? If it does those things, don't worry about it. It's probably not a problem. Number 4 is reels. If you are not doing reels, like I said, it's kind of like trying to go upstream with the algorithm, and you're just gonna have the algorithm work against you instead of with you. And so you're making your life a little bit harder simply because either you don't want to try reels, you don't know how, or because you just, I don't know. But I totally understand that a lot of people get antsy when it comes to reels. And you know, that's totally fair. Number 5, are you doing community building? Are you engaging? Are you commenting? Are you DMing people? If you're not doing these things, you're hurting your engagement, you're not working with the algorithm, and you're setting roadblocks in your growth. And then the final point is optimization. You have access to analytics that tell you when the best time to post is. It tells you what content's performing the best. It tells you how many followers you're getting. It's telling you how many followers you're losing. It's telling you tons of different information, so use it. The next common question you guys had for me was, what do I do if my content isn't performing well? And the first thing that I want you to do is know that you actually have to create more content and different types of content. And second of all, use your analytics to help you. Like I said, if you know that certain types of content did well, create different pieces of content around that same topic. And the reason why you want to create even more content is because you're heightening your chances of finding something that does work for you. And you're also doing that at a more rapid pace if you crank up your content creation versus shutting down and retreating from it. And it's very common for people to retreat instead of to get more aggressive with it. So if your content isn't performing that well, you're not getting a ton of likes or engagements on it, then, you know, keep trying new things. Resist that temptation to pull back and feel upset that your content isn't performing. If something's not working, then you should zero in on that and fix that problem. And analytics will do that for you, and so will creating more content. It has to. Like at some point down the road, whether it takes you 1 month, 1 week, 1 year to figure it out, you will figure it out by doing that. You have to, because you're trying different types of content. You're repurposing different topics that already did well. So that will fix your problem. I can't tell you when, but you generally will know whether a piece of content is performing well or performing bad within a couple days, which is nice. Just because Instagram's algorithm prioritizes recency, so you're gonna get the most likes, comments, and engagements on posts pretty fast, and then you can go and evaluate it right away. Something else I'd encourage you to look at is try and brainstorm why that content isn't working. For example, I know that carousel posts for me tend to perform the best, and that has to do with the format of the post, because people, if you're doing a carousel post and there's lots of value and there's lots of tips, obviously people are going to want to save that and come back to it later. That's why it sparks a post interaction. But if you created content on a topic that, let's say, did really well, consider why that topic is doing well over other topics. The third common question you guys had for me was, what do I do if my engagement is low? And the short answer is to make sure that you're doing a lot of engaging. Unfortunately, because engagement involves relationship building, unlike with content, it can take a while in order to improve. So for me, I found DMing you guys for this workshop to be really big for me in terms of increasing my engagement. I saw significantly more post interactions, and because I contacted each of you, my feed posts were more likely to show up in your feed. Okay, so if you weren't getting the content from me before, you were more likely to get it from me after. And so that's why if you're wanting to increase your engagement and work with the algorithm, don't be a sitting duck. Be proactive, welcome new followers, start conversations with them. It's really effective. And it'll help you with your sales later on because you've already established rapport and you've already built a bit of a relationship with them, so they are more likely to trust you. Other things you can do to boost your engagement is make sure that you're asking engaging questions in your captions, or you can even include it on the last slide of your post as well. Doing little things like this can really help with engagement. Like I said, you may not see a difference with it immediately. And in fact, you probably won't see a difference with it immediately unless you're DMing people. But it is going to be something that's helpful for you in the long term. Another thing you can do to increase your engagement is actually to just do kind acts for other people. For example, if you're doing a collab and you shout somebody out without, asking them anything in return, or if you do something helpful for your followers without them asking, just because you had a conversation, you know that would particularly be helpful for them, whatever that looks like for your business. But by doing little random acts of kindness like that, it makes them a lot more likely to not only like you, but to actually engage with your posts and to hopefully become customers of yours later down the road. Finally, I did get questions about protecting your content from plagiarism and people stealing it. Obviously, you guys are going to be putting in a lot of time and effort into your content, and it's not fair for somebody else to take what you just did and not give you any credit for it and even claim it as their own. Obviously, if somebody is highly motivated to steal your content, they're just going to steal your content. But you definitely don't want to be making this process easier on them, right? People who are stealing content by definition are pretty lazy. So if you are adding your branding and your logos there and your Instagram handle is in a spot that's really difficult to remove, then that's all going to deter people from stealing your content. But in the event that it is taken and it's reposted and you're not giving credit, at least your Instagram handle will still show up on the post itself, so you're still getting your name and your brand out there. Having consistent branding is not only going to entice people to follow you a little bit better, but it also does a lot for you in terms of preventing people from stealing your content. If you are doing plain posts that have like a black or a white background, those are very void of branding, and so they are actually easier to steal. So like I said, just adding your logo or your Instagram handle or your website can really help you protect yourself, but also make sure that you're still getting growth and mention, even if somebody isn't being very generous and giving that for you automatically. You can even add your branding and your social links directly onto your reels. I like to embed these on Splice specifically, but you can also do it directly in Instagram Reels. You would just click on text and you would just do your Instagram handle, or you can do the exact same thing on different platforms like TikTok. And this just helps you make sure that you're getting mention accolades for your work that you're putting into your posts. I hope at this point you have a strong social media strategy and that you're working on your content, or you're focused on optimizing it and improving it in any way that you can that's going to help you. I also hope that you've been working on your processes to be consistent with your content. Next week, we are going to get into setting up a sales funnel and different forms of actually getting sales specifically. And so It's going to be a lot of information, and I would encourage you guys to, hear me out on each option, because I'm going to go through the option. I'm going to say this is how it's done, and these are cases when it is best used, because I want you guys to be picking sales strategies that are going to complement your business the best and get you the highest conversion. Not every sales strategy is going to work for every business. Businesses that have free trials or free samples have the easiest potential and the highest conversions, but obviously that's not going to work for every business. A clothing brand cannot give like a free like square cloth of a shirt or anything like that, right? So hopefully I can give you guys tons of different information on how to approach sales in your business. I'm also going to do my best to structure it so that I let you know what the least expensive methods are and what a little bit more scalable methods that can be used if you have a higher budget to work with. I know that that's going to be different for all of you guys, so hopefully you find that helpful, and we're going to get into a bunch of different things like how to do SEO, run Google ads, Facebook ads, boost posts in Instagram and Facebook directly, and we're also going to get into retargeting and a bunch of different other things. So I'm excited to go over that with you next week. I hope to see you there, and I will talk to you guys soon.